call the December 15th, 2021 meeting of the State Board of Education to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bess.
Here.
Ms. DeLosa.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Durham.
Present.
Dr. Ernest.
Present and accounted for.
Dr. Freitas.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Gastineau.
Here.
Mr. Mapes.
Here.
Ms. Moat.
Here.
Ms. Runchler.
Here.
Mr. Watts.
Here.
And Dr. Jenner.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the November 10th, 2021 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Chad, do you need any of the votes on the phone? I know that we were moving, and so I wanted to make sure. We're good. Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have a few people on the phone today. It is finals week in the state of Indiana, so we have Erica and Kristen and Greg, who are probably, hopefully not as we speak since we're in a board meeting, but today are working with students on final exams. As you know, most of our schools' last day will be Thursday in the case of Perry Township and a few school corps, and many will finish on Friday of this week for about a 2-week fall break, and then we'll be back at it on January 3rd, 4th time period. And on that note, I truly hope that everyone, whether on the board, in the audience today, in our classrooms across the state, take time to relax, rejuvenate, enjoy your family and friends, put some of this stuff down, of which will certainly be here when we get back in January, but really take time for you to enjoy the holiday season. What a year this has been. We kicked it off as a board January 11th-ish and haven't stopped since then. Our schools still worked to navigate COVID quite a bit this year, and wow, have they done a remarkable job. And I have some data to share with you today. Our educators across the state have delivered incredible victories. And this time last year, we did not know real-time attendance data. Thank you to Dr. John Keller and team and schools across the state who worked to launch a real-time data share. It's also known as EdFi. It has not been easy because anytime you launch something new, you always learn some lessons. But the data has yielded really great results and good information for us to know. And so just so you all know, at close of semester, we're now able to track Indiana's attendance data in real time. And so I'm going to tell you what our attendance is for this year. So we've had approximately 1 to 2% virtual due to COVID. That could be because the student had COVID or they were quarantined. We've had approximately 5 to 6% absent, approximately 2 to 3% are virtual full-time, and approximately 89 to 92% of children have been in person at school every day. And I think that in-person point is something that educators across the state can absolutely celebrate. 1.1 million children, 98 to 92% every week, have been actually in person. That doesn't just mean the schools were open. Our schools have been open, almost all, every single week. It means that students were actually in their seat. We also, when we think about the student pillar and that focus, launching of the spring assessments this past spring, we had 97% participation rate, which really allowed us to have a lot of information as a state on how our students are performing and what were the impacts of COVID-19. We immediately, as a team, partnered, and as a team meaning educators across the state, State Board of Ed, DOE, partnered with the National Center for Assessment to launch a study. That study has been released and is out, but that really allowed us to understand the data so that then we could immediately deploy tactics to support our school. I'm just going to highlight a few here. One of the tactics we deployed, and this was the General Assembly provided $150 million to support student learning recovery grants, and we deployed in late May, early June, $122 million across 82 of 93 counties in Indiana to focus on literacy, mathematics, and college and career readiness. So some of them started in the summer with summer programming. Some of them are doing before school and after school, even throughout the school year. We have another approximately $28 million that will be awarded soon. That grant application period is closed, and again, we'll be announcing that very soon to, again, support the urgency of student learning recovery. A few examples that we've highlighted publicly in our weekly newsletters include, and this is not limited to, but include United Way of Central Indiana, who partnered with many schools across Marion County, United Way of Grant County, Boys and Girls Club of Huntington County, Seymour, St. Joseph County, et cetera. So really, again, appreciate that local effort to make sure our students get caught up, get as prepared as possible, despite the challenges we faced. So another thing, we launched a free 24/7 tutoring for middle school and high school students. That partnership's with schoolhouse.world, and that's focused on reading, writing, math. At any time, a middle school or high school child can call or get online and get access to free tutoring. So still getting that word out. And then third thing I'll highlight is, we've been very focused as a board not only on literacy and mathematics. I'm pounding BJ, but I'm not snapping. This table's a little more sensitive to the movement. But we've been really focused on literacy, mathematics, and pathways, of which I've already highlighted, but I want to highlight the pathways piece because in late April, we launched a partnership initiative with Ivy Tech, Vincennes, schools across the state to say, of all of our graduating seniors, how many are within 1 to 3 courses of completing a credential? The data came back. We had 4,000 students sitting in our Indiana classrooms who were that close to a credential, which is incredible. And the deployment happened fast. 1,900 students signed up, participated from 275 high schools in Indiana, and more than 700 students received additional credentials beyond a high school diploma, saving over $1.4 million in tuition, textbook fees, et cetera. That's pillar one, some quick highlights. Pillar two, our educators, talent, quality, value of our educators. So I want to highlight a couple things here. We launched Indiana Learning Lab. That was in partnership with several people on the stage here and several people in the room, that was a partnership with Philanthropy, K-12 schools, and the College Football Playoff Foundation. We've talked about this. The College Football Championship is in January. Their big focus is supporting educators, which came at a super time for us. And so this Learning Lab was launched to provide instructional resources, professional development opportunities, live training, et cetera, and more is to come on that. And I know BJ and Pat, you've been a big part of that as well, but that is moving forward and expanding every day. Second thing I'll highlight there in the educator pillar is strengthening teacher pipeline. Launched a partnership with UIndy through CEL, specifically targeting the special education licensure. We saw a problem in the state of Indiana. We didn't have time to admire the problem, right? We've got to get after it and solve it. We had several partners step up with UIndy to make that happen. And I think those signups for anyone interested in being a special education teacher are still available right now. So please sign up. Second one I'll mention in strengthening the educator pipeline is a partnership that was announced through Ivy Tech and Marian University and K-12 schools, targeting 5 communities to really strategically attract more racially and ethnically diverse teachers and teachers in high-need areas. So the communities of focus to start with include Indianapolis, see if I can memorize this, Indianapolis, Evansville, South Bend, Fort Wayne, and this is all the Lake County. There's all the pressure. So really appreciative of, again, a public 2-year university partnering with a private 4-year to really focus in on strengthening our educator pipeline. The third is we launched a series called Teachers Who Shape Us, pulling some of the top names in Indiana to say, tell us how a teacher impacted your life. Let's elevate the profession. We must. So we started, we had Dr. Box, we've had Governor Holcomb. We just announced last Friday, and it's out, Quinn Buckner joined us, which was a fantastic interview. And we have more to come in the new year. Our third pillar has to do with efficiencies. And one of the things I'll mention there is efficiencies in capacity building, so supporting capacity building in local communities. One of the things I'll mention there is launching the department's Office of School Efficiency. We were able to fortunately recruit Courtney Shaftsma, who was executive director at DUAB, to come over. She has a great relationship with many of our superintendents and CFOs throughout the state, and the focus is on, how can we have all of this federal money coming in, how can we get yield the best impact and return on investment for these dollars, noting that it's such a fast timeline. So on that, we have a ESSER funding, or a federal funding dashboard that will be launched very soon, that will show transparently where we are as a state. Phase 1, it will show every school corporation, and you can disaggregate it by gear, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So you'll be able to see what was allocated and what has been spent so far. And then phase 2 is to get that down to categories. So we'll know how that money is being spent. So a real strategic effort to make sure we are as transparent as possible with all of this money coming in, and so that you can see that as the public. In 2022, super energized by, and I'm going to hit on not too many things, 3. We're launching literacy and STEM, a major initiative, and you'll see that in early 2022, likely early January. Literacy focused around the science of reading. What we have seen when we look at our data is specifically when you think about our racially and ethnically diverse students, our low-income students, our special education students, the data very clearly shows that we have an opportunity to do more to serve our students. And the science of reading teaches phonics, phonemic awareness, whereas some of our other programs, reading can be taught in different ways through cues, like, for example, take a look at the picture, that can be a cue, or read the full sentence. If the sentence doesn't make sense, read it again. Not to go into a whole literacy discussion right here, but we are pumped to launch more support for our schools who opt in. It will be an opt-in option for our schools who want it, who need it, for that extra literacy support. We'll also be launching in STEM. And then the third thing I'll highlight is what you're going to hear about today and what I see that many of you are here to speak on today, which is the Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed, the Indiana GPS. This is one of the most exciting opportunities we've had as a state for years and years, and that it goes beyond just a single test score and looks at a variety of indicators that really, really matter when you think about the continuum and the education of a child. So more to come on that. On that note, I would like to pause and take a breath and offer any other board members who may have comments before we get started. Seeing none, let's get to public comment. We'll start with John O'Neill from ISTA. And on deck, Todd Bass from Principals Association. On deck. Say it again. Yes, sir. I should have paused. That's a good point. Do you want to wait until the agenda item? Or do you want to go? You're at the podium.
I can just discuss now.
Okay, we're ready for you, John.
Thank you, Secretary Jenner and board members, and thank you for another opportunity to share some of our member input on the dashboard indicators. Some of this you may have heard previous meetings, but the department and state board staff have continued to outreach to us and get a member and educator voice in this, and we really appreciate that. And we do support the shift away from the heavy reliance on standardized testing. As you know, every year we push to have multiple measures of accountability instead of just a single snapshot score. That there's much more encompassed in the learning environment than that. And this is a good step in the right direction, but we do want to go over a few concerns and questions our members still have on the various components. And I know, Dr. Jenner, some of these you probably heard the other day, but I'm just going to try to go through things quickly since I'm on the time limit here. But for academic mastery, there's concern about having adequate capacity and resources to implement successfully. Issues like having guardrails for high mobility students because these students have greater challenges to be addressed. The list of assessments, it was brought up by our members a few times that ASVAB was not highlighted in there as much as hadn't been in the pathways, and we know that's an important pathway for many students. There are still questions about how much weight each indicator will carry, and I know that's an ongoing conversation. And then also questions about how special ed will fall into this. More details needed on the special ed issue. On the career and post-secondary readiness, I know that you're all aware that ISTA has significant concerns holding schools accountable postgraduate due to the list of experiences they encounter after that. And we've had those conversations prior. And the same would go for the median income factor. Just there are cultural and family life factors that cause variation and many other characteristics, and sometimes those things get tricky. And I will point out that I think the underlying theme that our members seem to hit the most was that a lot of these indicators, as again, a step in the right direction, still tend to have a bias towards the higher socioeconomic status. And we've raised that issue, and we would really like to see some sort of continued effort to address that. I know that there's going to be data differentiation by income, racial groups and things like that, but we really want to focus on that SES piece and also capacity. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our recommendations for the sake of time. As we've said before, we would like to see some additional indicators considered, even if that's at the local flexibility level part of the dashboard, such as professional accountability, PD opportunities, retention rates, things like that, class size, school climate, working conditions factors, curriculum, student and administrative feedback, things of that nature. And finally, just a couple of concluding thoughts. This is another major undertaking. Our members are overwhelmed, not just from COVID, but from the change in standards and assessments over the years. As you know, we've done a lot of change, and it's kind of always been frequent and immediate. And so just know that our members are probably going to have a while of adjusting to yet another major shift. And there are concerns about the capacity on that and how much more work will fall onto their laps. And then finally, this, as much of the other work going on right now, ISTA believes should be viewed through a racial and social equity lens, as not all districts are uniform across the state. Other existing challenges add to that difficulty. So I will stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you for the work you've done and for continuing to include ISTA as part of this. We really believe that our member voice is crucial moving forward.
Thank you for your comments.
Making things easy for me. Thank you.
Yeah. As you walk back to your seat, Justin Olenmiller, you want to go ahead? Speak? Great. Come on up. John, thank you for your comments. A couple things as you walk back. This dashboard is designed to be very, very student-centered, future-focused. And so this will this will be the most transparent we've ever seen in terms of indicators with regard to student population ever in the history of Indiana. And so when we think about, and I want to respond to that what you mentioned about student population, this will show where we are with regard to our racially and ethnically diverse students, where we are with regard to our low-income students in, again, the most transparent way we've ever seen in the state. So I just wanted to really, really hit that because that is very important to us as a department and a board. We absolutely want all of our children to be set up for the greatest lifelong success and prosperity ahead, and it is critical. Justin. Hi, great to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much, Secretary Jenner and members of the board. My name is Justin Olenmiller. I'm with Stand for Children Indiana, and we work with hundreds of parents in Indianapolis to increase engagement in their child's education and help families understand their innate power to drive change and improvement in our public schools. Today you'll be hearing from a few of the parents that we work with who are passionate advocates, yes, for their children, but also for all children in our public schools. What these parents have to say is infinitely more interesting and important than anything that I will share with you today. But I do want to take a moment to thank the Department of Education and share a few data points about what we think could be included in the GPS dashboard. First, we appreciate the process and the proactive work by the department and the board to get feedback. STAN parents have been fortunate to join numerous calls with Ron Sandlin, who has been great in working with families, listening to their feedback, and asking great questions. It's been refreshing to see the department take a proactive step to really seek feedback from parents, especially working families who find it difficult to make it to board meetings during the day. We also want to celebrate the department's continued focus on raising ninth grade on track as a meaningful indicator in student success. The data coming from the University of Chicago makes clear that there's no better predictor of on-time high school graduation than freshmen having enough credits to be on track without having to retake a class in their ninth grade year. We certainly hope this board will approve that ninth grade on track as a headline measure. We also appreciate the receptiveness to ensuring FAFSA completion is a accountable metric as well, headline measure, if you will, for determining a school's letter grade. Overall, again, this process has been thoughtful, and we so appreciate the IDOE and their work on this effort. Keeping the true north in mind, ensuring that we measure things that predict attainment for the attributes that lead to life success. I'll wrap up by saying that the department and this board, we'd like to request that true north also include an intentional focus and a broad and bright spotlight on one of the biggest challenges in education, and that's closing the achievement gap between race and income. We hear from parents all the time that our public education system needs to shine a brighter spotlight on the achievement gaps that have only grown wider since the start of the pandemic. That's why we're advocating for a measure in the new accountability system that would hold schools and districts statewide to account for addressing these gaps. Achievement gaps are not an urban problem or a rural problem. They're an Indiana problem. They're a national problem. The 2021 iLearn and iStep proficiency rates, comparing students who receive free and reduced lunch versus students who do not qualify for free and reduced lunch, clearly show the pervasive problem. Statewide, 38% passing the state assessment are non-free and reduced lunch versus 16 who qualify for free and reduced lunch. That's a 22% gap. When you look at other districts across the state, again, urban, rural, suburban, MSD of Washington Township and Indianapolis, nearly 39% of students not qualifying for free and reduced lunch tested proficient on the iLearn, and compared to 8% of students who are receiving free and reduced lunch. That is a 31% gap. That same gap was 23% in Clay Community Schools. New Albany and Floyd County, it's nearly 30%. For Richmond Community Schools, the income-related achievement gap is 19%. Unless we take this data, which is often included in subgroups, and make closing the achievement gap a headline measure, we're going to continue elevating the district performance in ways that do not hold schools to account for supporting our most vulnerable and traditionally underserved students. Again, we want to thank the board and the secretary and the department for engaging all of us in this process. There is so much great things included in the GPS system. We really appreciate the work that's been done. We think this is a game changer, Secretary, as you said earlier. We just want to make sure that we continue to shine that bright and broad spotlight on the achievement gap as we hold schools to account and hopefully measure, again, the positive work going on in our schools every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin Oldmiller. Really appreciate it from Stand. And I'll continue on with the Stand folks. So we have Latoya Hale Taheru. Latoya Hale Taheru. Welcome.
Thank you. I would like to thank the State Board of Education for the opportunity to speak today. As you said, my name is Latoya Hale Taheru. I have 3 beautiful children. For years now, I've advocated that kids in every neighborhood have access to great schools. I've advocated for failing schools to model after successful ones that close the opportunity/achievement gap, because I know too well the gaps that exist in many of our schools. I am here today because I want to see that change, and I believe that by making achievement gap data a headline metric that counts towards a school's grade, we can begin to close the test score gaps seen across our state for children of color and low-income children. As someone who was transient throughout most of my own childhood, I know that kids who come from communities with great disparities need even more poured into them due to the barriers they face. I often wonder what I could have given my children if the trajectory of my life included a first-class education with the proper supports. I'm actively involved in my children's education because I don't want them to wonder the same thing one day. I want them to be the ones that break all the statistics. More than that, I do not want any of our children to be limited to those statistics. By including achievement gap data as a headline metric, we can hold the schools accountable that need to offer more support to students based on their demographic or familiar income levels. We can also learn from schools that prove what I know: all kids are capable of learning with the right supports. I remember sitting in a boardroom, not unlike this one, when my oldest daughter was still in elementary school. I sat there crying as they told me that the school that she was attending, a school that I was once excited for her to attend, had been failing for years. As they read their statistics, I felt hopeless. She had already been in several schools, all in an effort to find the right fit for her. But I knew that my voice mattered in making positive change. I also knew that the school was in transition. A model was put in place to help turn the school around. I learned about our A through F grading system around that time and was a driver for the change I continue to advocate for. Since that meeting, I've spoken at too many press conferences, school board meetings to count. I've advocated for high-quality schools in every corner of my community in every way that I know how. That school I mentioned before went from an F rating to a C rating in 1, maybe 2 years. But to me, the opportunity gap was still present, and that was not reflected in the school's grade. At that time, the letter grade did not tell the whole story. Now I have 3 school-aged children today. I am at a hopeful place in their educational journey. My oldest will be a senior in high school next year. While I'm sad to say I feel like I failed her because we continue to hop around to find a good fit. My 2 youngest children are rooted at a good school. The school closes the opportunity gap and can equip them with a high-quality education that will prepare them for their future. My hope and the reason I am here today is not just for my kids, but for all kids. It shouldn't be this hard to find a quality school that closes achievement gaps and opportunity gaps. That's why making those metrics count on a school's grade is important. Too many kids don't have the quality education that is denying them of a quality future with economic security. My hope is that other parents don't have to hop around to find a quality school that way I had to with my oldest daughter. My hope is that other parents are able to easily find schools that can provide them with the great first-class education, the type of education my youngest children are now receiving at Paramount. Access to quality educational opportunity is a crucial key in transforming a child's future outcomes. Assuring that every student in Indiana has the equitable opportunity and access to a quality education could very well save them from a life of poverty, systemic oppression, and a history of historic trauma. Please make sure that our A through F grading system holds schools accountable to closing opportunity gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, LaToya. Gina Murray.
Good morning, members of the board and Secretary Jenner. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Eugenia Murray, and I am the mother of 3 beautiful children who attend public schools. All of them are doing well academically, including my son Elijah, who is getting ready to graduate and decide which state university to attend, somewhere between Ball State and Indiana State. He has to make his decision.
An opinion? We can vote on that. I'm kidding. We won't. We would never do that anyway. Right? Gosh.
So hopefully that'll come this weekend.
I hope so too.
My children's academic journeys are a testament to great teachers and a great academic model. But their success is also because of my advocacy as a parent, which was driven by our state A through F school rating system. I am here to ask this board to maintain support of issuing A through F letter grades for schools. I'm also here to request that you include an achievement gap measure as a headline metric in our A through F system. If we want to empower families to advocate for change in struggling schools, then A through F letter grades for schools are so important. In 2014, I learned that my children's school, IPS 93, was rated an F. Working with an education advocacy group, Stand for Children, I began exploring ways to improve our school. That's when I learned about nearby IPS schools 88 and 99, and they were rated A schools. These schools were only a few miles away and had similar student demographics. So why were the grades so different? The answer was Project Restore, a turnaround model led by 2 great educators who were overseeing the program in both 88 and 99. Myself and other parents from School 93 went to visit these nearby schools, nearby A schools. We were blown away by what we saw. Parents were receiving weekly updates on student performance, and the entire school was focused on transparently sharing where our kiddos stood and empowering parents with information we needed to support our students. I decided to fight for this turnaround model, Project Restore, to be replicated in School 93. I worked with a team of parents to gather hundreds of petition signatures. I spoke at several IPS board meetings and met with the superintendent. I joined my friend and fellow parent Ashley Thomas to hold a silent protest at a board meeting where we wore T-shirts with messages drawn in marker to support Restore coming to School 93. We won this campaign. And now the Project Restore model has grown into numerous schools as part of the Failing Leadership Academy network. The model has helped my children succeed and is lifting up hundreds of other students in Indiana. I'm not sure where my children's academic journey would have been the same if I did not see that F letter grade for School 93. It was my key motivator for other parents I organized. Just imagine if our school was listed as need improvement or had a color-coded rating. Any rating that lacked transparency and was not clear may have led to continued academic struggles. At this time when COVID is disrupting our lives and our schools, parents need to use our voices more than ever. And we need transparent information to help us act. Honest data, even if it's harsh and comes in the form of a red F next to my school. I do believe A through F can be improved, and I want to thank this board for considering new and updated metrics. One change I want to request is including a measure for closing the achievement gap. Schools need to be held accountable for helping our low-income students excel in learning at the same pace as our more privileged children. Gaps in learning are consistent across our state. This is not just an urban school issue. In closing, I want to tell you a story about my daughter Angelina, who recently asked me why some of her peers were receiving extra support and services from the school. I explained that some children need additional support and may be behind academically, and that she was thankfully doing well and did not need that help. I told her it was a sign that her school is doing what it needs to do, focusing on those children who have fallen behind to close the gap. Unfortunately, all schools are not being as intentional as PLA in working to address achievement gaps among students who have been historically undeserved. This is why we need an A through F grading system that holds schools accountable for closing achievement gaps. Thank you for your time and listening to my personal story.
Thank you for sharing. Angelina, what school do you attend? We're going to give you a quick mic time. What school do you attend?
I attend the school James and Rosemary Phelan Leadership Academy.
Okay.
And currently I am a junior, and next year I will be a senior.
What do you want to do after graduation? This is the last question I'll ask you, I promise.
After graduation, I want to go to DePaul University in Greencastle, and I want to science.
Paul University, get a major in Greencastle, and then come back to Indiana to work and live?
Yeah.
I added that, but I hope so. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Next we have Dantia Dyson. Okay, so she's not here, okay? Rachel, or she wrote how to say it, Raquel Wright. Wrote it in parentheses, and I didn't keep reading. Raquel Wright, thank you. Stand for children.
Good morning, State Board of Education members.
Morning.
My name is Raquel Wright. I'm the mother of 2 biological children and 2 godchildren that are all school-aged and attend public schools. I'm here today because I would like the opportunity gap to be measured on the new dashboard, and I would like the measure to count towards our school grades as part of A through F. As a mother and passionate education advocate, my goal is to make sure that we are giving all our students an equitable chance to be all they can be, no matter their socioeconomic status or race. Throughout the year, I've been advocating for equity and closing achievement gaps within the Indianapolis Public Schools District alongside a group of other parents. Having data regarding gaps on test scores based on race or income level will truly help parents pick the right fit for their children, and it will also help members of communities both advocate and offer solutions for improvement. I believe closing an opportunity gap or achievement gap makes our community better. If we can close these gaps, I believe crime rates will go down and our children will have a greater opportunity to display their highest potentials and feel better and be the best at themselves. My oldest daughter will transition from middle school to high school next year. We're currently looking at the area high schools that will be a good fit for her education needs, athletic aspirations, and future goals. I like the A through F model when I'm searching for schools, as I'm familiar with it, as we grew up with it in school as well. It's easy to use and understand and helps me narrow down the list of schools we believe will serve our current and future needs. As I noted before, I would like the opportunity gap to count towards a school grade because I don't currently see that at the forefront, and I believe it is vital information. It will help parents like me answer questions like I find myself asking now. Is a particular school offering intentional support that nurtures achievement for all students or only some? And are programs at this school designed to lift our students to their highest potentials? We cannot deny that achievement gaps exist, but by making this data count towards the school grade and making sure the information is transparently displayed, we can improve schools and our communities over time. We should all understand which schools are educating children well, no matter their socioeconomic background or race. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time as well. And I think Dontia Dyson maybe just walked in. Would you like to speak, or do you want to catch your breath? And then Dave Marcotte, would you like to wait until GPS? You would like to do it now. Okay, you'll be following on deck.
I'm sorry, everyone, for being late. I'm a single father with two babies, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. One's autistic, so it was a bad morning. Sweating, running through the building with the kids. But they're
glad you're
here.
here.
Oh yeah, my kids are out there. Number one IPS student. I also a parent, 4 generations. I love y'all. So, my name is Dontia Dyson. I am a public school father, and I am here because I want to share how the A through F system has changed my daughter's entire life. As someone who has advocated for closing the achievement or opportunity gaps, I would also like that the data be weighed on how our schools are graded. After my daughter experienced bullying and wasn't making friends in a nearly all-white school, I moved her to our neighborhood school at the time. I didn't know the A through F system existed. She was making friends. She was making friends, but she was not learning much. It was around this time I learned about the A through F system. When I looked up her school, I was shocked to find out it was failing and had been for years. Even being new to the system, I knew what an F meant. I was so glad to learn about this life-changing tool because it was easy to understand and allowed me to find the best school for my daughter, a school that both has the peers that look like her and share life experiences, but it also has a good letter grade. While I do love the system, I also believe that it can be improved. A lot of our schools, even the ones that appear to be high-performing, have large gaps in their test scores based on income and race. I want that to change, but I don't think that it will be, I don't think it will if we don't ensure that our schools are only graded on their test scores, but on ensuring that these are not opportunity gaps in the scores. As a father, I want to know that all the information schools are supposed to be teaching is reaching the children. No matter their income level or race, parents want to make sure their kids are getting the best opportunities. We don't want to send them to a place that doesn't care about them or have the resources they need. I want to know that we live in an equitable state that values all. I think a lot of this that starts in our schools. Sure, we could just show the achievement gap data, but I believe it is very important in Indiana, our Hoosier state, that we make sure our schools are graded in a way that shows that we care on how all our students are doing, and not just some grades. Please make the data regarding achievement or opportunity gap as a headline metric that counts towards the school's letter grade on the A through F dashboard. And thank you so much.
Marcotte, the Indiana Urban Schools Association.
Good morning.
Morning.
Secretary Jenner and members of the Board of Education, I believe I have a letter in your packet supporting the GPS conceptual model, and I would just like to share a few paragraphs of that letter publicly at this time. Test scores alone do not define the totality of academic achievement of any child, and although test scores are an important determiner of proficiency, they are unable to capture the complete embodiment of individual performance to parents, nor collective school performance to the community. A comprehensive data dashboard will allow schools to reveal a more thorough examination of performance via additional benchmarks and descriptors than a finite system of test scores. The current accountability system has limitations, making it difficult to drill down into the complexity of data to fully understand a school or district academic performance. It is critical for schools to have the ability to publish the many indicators demonstrating student achievement in a manner easy to understand. A broad data dashboard system of accountability will accomplish this goal. The Indiana Urban Schools Association stands with the Indiana Department of Education in their work to create a truly authentic accountability system, the result of which will benefit all citizens of Indiana. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. So at this time, the remaining public comments have to do with the GPS. So let's move forward. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Dr. Jenner, before we do, if we could, please, I need to recuse myself from consent item D.
So BJ Watts recusal from consent item D.
Yes.
Is a dog. Thank you.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yes, I heard Katie Moat and David Freitas. So Katie, do you also have a recusal?
Yes, please. I need to let the record reflect that I am recusing myself from consent item A as an add-on.
Katie Moat, recusal from agenda item A. David Freitas, I heard
Thank
you
you.
as, yeah, thank you. I heard you as well.
Yes, Madam Chair, I am recusing myself from voting on consent agenda items L, O, and P.
David Freitas, recusal from L, O, and P. Thank you for that. Scott Bess?
Yeah, I have to recuse from item S.
Scott Bess, recusal from item S. Any other board members? Okay, and I think
Motion to approve.
I heard a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. With a motion and a second, any discussion? In that case, roll call, please.
Mr. Bess.
Aye.
Ms. DeLosa.
Yes.
Mr. Durham.
Yes.
Dr. Ernest. Dr. Freitas. Mr. Gastineau.
Yes.
Mr. Mapes.
Yes.
Ms. Moat.
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler.
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Dr. Jenner.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved. Thank you.
So moving on to new business, today we have action to approve the headline indicators aligned to the Indiana GPS. I'd like to just open, and I think I saw Senator Rotz pop in. Maybe he did on act. Oh, did he step out? Oh, he just stepped out. Thank you. I wanted to just start by acknowledging the General Assembly in this past spring session kicked off the ability for us to rethink accountability and consider a dashboard through the passage of 1514. And so just want to thank them for allowing us the opportunity to rethink how we might look at data from early learning through K-12 and longitudinally. I also want to take a moment to thank the many, many, many stakeholders who've come to the table, gosh, month after month since the passage of 1514 to be a part of conversations with our team and the department, State Board of Ed. So the Principals Association, Indiana's Public School Superintendents, Indiana School Business Officials, Indiana School Board Association, rural superintendents, urban superintendents, suburban superintendents, ISTA, NAACP, Indianapolis Urban League, Stand for Children Indiana, IQE, Indiana Charter School Network, Non-Public School Association, Ed Choice, the Mind Trust, Commission for Higher Education, Department of Workforce Development, Governor's Workforce Cabinet, Ivy Tech, Vincennes, Ball State, Trine, Purdue, students in the Student Advisory Group setting, Indiana Charter School Board, the Center for Leadership Development, Lillian Dowman, Richard M. Fairbanks Foundation, the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, Ascend, Indianapolis Mayor's Office, Latinos Count, IYI, and I probably am missing some. We are so, so appreciative of all of the feedback and stakeholder input we've had in working through this. I also would like to acknowledge, and Dave Marcotte shared that he did write a letter, which every board member has. We also have letters in support from the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents, letter in support from the Indiana Non-Public Education Association, letter of support from the Indiana Rural Superintendents Association, a letter of support from Senator Jeff Rotz, who of course chairs the Senate Education Committee, a letter of support from the Mind Trust. We also have a couple of one public comment who wanted to reserve until we got to the agenda item. So at this time, I'll go ahead and have Todd Bass come up to do that public comment.
Good morning. Not trying to be difficult, but just wanted to make comments relative to this agenda item as we get here. And good morning and thank you, Secretary Jenner, members of the State Board, and those who are on the phone with us as well. We appreciate it. I'm Todd Bess, and the Executive Director for IASP. We appreciate all those opportunities that you just mentioned that we've had for providing feedback. We've done leadership meetings, principal focus groups in a couple different settings, and then there was participation from the Indiana Department of Education in our Fall Professionals Conference just this last November. Thank you, Dr. Jenner. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Ron, for a tremendous amount of time that you gave to us, especially during that conference. We are certainly supportive of the Indiana GPS dashboard for its ability to more fully describe the success of our schools and the students beyond the single letter grade. By considering multiple metrics that don't factor into a grade, the Indiana GPS provides an opportunity for schools and community to fully grasp what is occurring when a school and the role the community plays in that success. These metrics also move well beyond the test scores that have defined schools for many years. Absolutely, we need academic mastery to include test scores. But by now expanding this to factors like kindergarten readiness and on-track measures, we can see this characteristic as a full continuum instead of just test scores at each grade level, and that applies to other characteristics as well with their respective measures and metrics, K to 12, and certainly beyond high school. Elementary and middle school principals have desired for years to have multiple measures like the high school has in the school grade formula, and that has been a very tough issue to resolve. With the dashboard metrics separate from the formula, we give these schools ways to showcase the amazing ways our educators are helping students gain important competencies and attributes without being focused on that question, will the student who doesn't meet the cut score impact my grade? The reality is that some of the metrics that will eventually be determined will show areas that need for improvement, and they should. We have a lot of work to do in Indiana, and we must be a part of that solution. The Indiana GPS dashboard can further connect the school and community together and tell the story. For by listening to each other, we will know those issues, and then together we find ways to resolve them. Appreciate that the Indiana DOE has acknowledged that there's a lot of work to be done yet with those dashboards as specific metrics are developed. And we appreciate that they're still seeking those solutions. To Jason and Ron, during our conference, you heard a lot of solutions offered, and we appreciate all that. We will continue to support this effort, as I'm very confident that our educators know how to help measure those characteristics. By listening and reflecting as we move forward, additional ideas will emerge that will illustrate school and community success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate your time today. This time, we'll have Ron Sandlin and Jason Callahan come up and present an update on where we are today. I do want to share, because of some public comment, which again, we always appreciate hearing, we are not rulemaking today for A to F. We are very, very clearly considering the whole education to workforce continuum, how to set up our students for the greatest possible success, noting the characteristics and the key data points along that continuum. As Ron and Jason will share, when we think about the design of this dashboard and the infrastructure and experience of which is one of our action items ahead upon passage, there are we've already received a lot of feedback on how we might disaggregate data. So a lot of opportunity there and more conversations ahead. But I just wanted to be clear, we are not rulemaking for A to F today. On that note, Jason Callahan.
Morning, Dr. Jenner, State Board members. It is our pleasure to be able to present on the Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed profile and indicators this morning in this final board meeting of the 2021 year. Today, our aim is to provide the State Board an overview of the progress we have made on the 5 characteristics we want to develop for every Indiana child. Also, our proposed indicators we plan to use to assess success for these characteristics, and finally, to ask you, the State Board, to affirm these headline indicators. Today is both the culmination of a lot of work, and it's also a signal of a lot of work to be done. I'll begin by providing a brief overview of our guiding principles and vision for the profile and indicators and our progress and our future timeline before turning it over to Mr. Sandlin, the Senior Director of School Performance and Transformation, who will frame the conversation around a data story and present the proposed headline indicators and the next steps. Finally, our General Counsel, Mr. Chad Rainey, will present the memorandum with specific headline indicators we are asking you to affirm today. Before I begin this overview, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Sandlin, Mrs. Maggie Pano, Mrs. Brenda Earps, Ms. Flora Jones, Mrs. Elise Locke, Mr. John Isaacson, who have all led the development and the research of the profile and the indicators. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Jenner and the State Board, our executive team, for making sure that this work is a top priority for the department. And I would like to thank our comms department for the ongoing support of slide decks and information as we continue to engage in the field and beyond. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our association partners, fellow state agencies, state and community stakeholders, as well as our parents, both present today and across the state, who have engaged in this process as we've identified characteristics affirmed those characteristics in October, circulated and evaluated an assortment of indicators, and arrived at the finalized headline indicators we bring to you today. I apologize to whoever I missed. It is our desire and belief that in the coming months, the Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed will impact our entire Department of Ed and many stakeholders across the state. Again, we believe this profile and indicators is student-centered. It places a priority on individual student growth and development, placing an emphasis on the whole child and equal importance regardless of the chosen pathway, whether it's employment, enlistment, or enrollment in post-secondary education. In order to address pathways to prosperity, communities will need to work together strategically, as we say, blurring the lines between K-12, higher ed, and industry. It is important to point out we acknowledge this profile and the indicators presented today are a large paradigm shift, expanding our focus on the development of skills and dispositions of a student and not just a single test score is a move toward one that is aspirational through the transparent display of multiple data points. The goal of this system is to provide a complete profile that will provide an opportunity to have both leading and lagging data points, seeking to use transparent data to ensure continuous improvement for all of our student pathways. A system that allows for pure data transparency and not one built on proxies. Again, this work has required extensive engagement by Hoosiers across the state of Indiana. Today is an affirmation of the what. It will be our signal to work with all of our stakeholders to research and develop the how are we going to do this. We also want to acknowledge there's still much work ahead of us as we continue to work with the field, with our colleagues, and many others to research and develop these indicators. Again, as we've said all along, we see this process as an evolution versus a revolution, a very iterative process. But at the end of the day, we believe this profile and dashboard will help us achieve our goals of serving all students in the state of Indiana, to continue to build out pathways that students can identify with and understand how the K-12 system is a vehicle not only for a fulfilling career, but a vehicle for a fulfilling life. And again, just to highlight all the different groups, many of those you heard from today, either through testimony or through letters, but again, really total engagement throughout the state of all stakeholders. I'm going to talk a little bit about our progress and timeline. Dr. Jenner mentioned House Enrolled Act 1514 and the passage of that allowed us to rethink the dashboard. Again, I would like to point out that as we started thinking about indicators, we took that step back and really thought about that complete profile, what we wanted for every Indiana student. 1514 requires longitudinal data. It's a both-and approach of not only the pass rates and growth data, graduation rate, it is also beyond that, a comprehensive, complete view of a student beyond academic mastery to include skills and dispositions. We also are required to make it easily accessible. So Mr. Sandlin has mentioned several times in meetings with stakeholders that we should be able to look at that summary page and within 10 seconds, parents and other stakeholders, school officials should be able to determine how well schools are doing in meeting the needs of all students. This is our progress to date. Again, early on, looked at that profile, the development of that profile. In October, you, the board, affirmed the 5 characteristics of the Indiana Graduates Prepared to Succeed. We did thorough research, brought to you in November for the public meeting, just an assortment of indicators, and then through stakeholder engagement and research, really narrowed that down to the headline indicators that Mr. Sandlin will present today. And again, so December 15th, here we are, and today is an affirmation of those headline indicators and alignment with Indiana GPS. As I've said, as Dr. Jenner has said, now the work will begun after today, where we will start to really dig into that dashboard design and user experience. Start talking about the business rules behind some of these indicators. We've talked about, we have a lot of the data, but again, defining those business rules, standardizing those, and again, what does that user experience look like? Going on to the spring, development of the aspirational initiatives, such as the employability micro-credential. We just wrapped up a study with Chamberlain and Dunn about how do we increase access to coursework that leads to more post-secondary credentials, specifically the Indiana College Core. Dr. Flores is leading the work again in the science of reading and STEM initiatives. And so this work will continue as we look to build out supports for the K-12 field, as Mr. O'Neill said, to build out that capacity and support for our K-12 colleagues. And then finally, in the fall of 2022, we'll roll out the dashboard, determine our state and local goals, and again, the continued support to the field of programs. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sandlin, who's going to talk a little bit about that data story and the proposed indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. As you can hear, I'm a little under the weather today, but if you'll bear with me, I'll try to get through these next few slides pretty quickly. I want to walk through concretely the journey that Mr. Callahan just outlined for each of you. As you know, we grounded ourselves in 5 characteristics of the Indiana graduate prepared to succeed, which served as our framework for the investigation of indicators and metrics to measure student progress along their PK through 12 and beyond journey. A slide like this we shared very early on in the process, as we've discussed, we really want to think about how we're measuring things at certain benchmarks, critical benchmarks along that student's journey aligned to each of these characteristics. And as we've done the investigation, and some of this came up last month at the board meeting, we found that several indicators, can arguably report out or share information about multiple characteristics. So as we started narrowing the list of indicators, we really started thinking about how do we capture the 5 characteristics, but also structure the data to tell a story of a student or a learner within a school or a school system, to be able to inform parents and educators on what is going well for the children in their system and where are the opportunities for improvement to ensure that all Hoosier graduates complete prepared to succeed. So as you can see here, we're really thinking about this in stages, thinking about that pre-K early learning stage. What are those critical benchmarks of success relative to the overall characteristics? Then going into the elementary middle stage, thinking about, again, developmentally, how are students developing and how are we measuring skills and knowledge in that space? Then we get into the high school level, which we really start to think about pathways and intentionality in that area, which has been a key theme throughout. And then finally, what we can measure beyond graduation to help us look back and take information, and I think that's an important word, information away about the programs that we're providing while they're within the system, while students are within the system. And so before I jump to the first set of indicators, I want to remind everybody that we are focused on the headline indicators today. And to reiterate what Mr. Callahan said, this is meant to signal overall school performance, a la in the A to F system, right? An individual, a consumer of this information, a parent, community member, educator should be able to review the information and see at a high level within 10 seconds, make a judgment, their own judgment, about the quality of an individual school or school system. We will still build out informational metrics underneath these headline metrics. As we know, one of the things we've been focused on from the beginning is not to overwhelm the consumer. And we know that people are coming to these data with different levels of capacity and a different focus. And so the informational metrics will complement the headline, and that's where we can really be nimble and tell additional, and dig into additional data to build out the story even further. But again, today's metrics are meant to be headline indicators. And before I jump in, I would be remiss if we don't clearly acknowledge the goal that both headline and informational indicators will be disaggregable by all of the federal subgroups and any additional subgroups that the state has identified. We are committed to ensuring that this dashboard illustrates performance not only of the schools overall, but of particular student groups within a school, to make sure that our systems understand how they are best supporting all learners throughout. And so with that, we will transition to the first set of proposed headline indicators. These are the indicators associated with the grades PK through 8. And the only structural guidance I'll give here is the blue boxes that extend from 3 through 5 through 6 through 8 just mean those data can be collected across those grade levels. It doesn't mean they will be reported out every single grade level. And then additionally, the asterisk on the slide is to suggest that we have some work to do around either how we're going to collect that data or what assessment tool we are going to use to measure that data. And in a little bit, I'll give an overview of a spreadsheet that we have that articulates some of the timelines associated with those aspirational indicators so that people can know what to expect and when they should expect those indicators to appear on a dashboard. So with that, I'll pause.
As you pause, unless you have really great eyesight and are in this room, you're probably trying to read that. It is linked, the memo which this is in is linked on our website right now. So whether you're here or at home, you can see that very easily. And of course, we will have these slides once the board votes available as well. Or you're welcome to come up closer. That's an option too.
Any questions or comments about the proposed headline indicators? I can move on to the 9 through 12 and then pause then.
The one thing I'll point to, and this is something we've heard from BJ and Pat multiple times regarding third grade literacy and really understanding not just at the end of third grade if a child can read, but how might we activate the data we already have to best triage and support our schools in triaging reading prior to. We know on this page, one of the most important, if not the most important, is that third grade literacy, making sure all children can read. So just wanted to note that one. But any other comments or thoughts, or we can proceed to, yes, sir, Byron?
I've just got a couple of questions, and I know we met on Monday on this, but I've got a couple of questions that kind of came up just from listening and what have you that, if I could. On the high school graduation on track.
I'm going to go forward one slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just meant on that.
No,
one.
we're good.
You meant on indicators. I can wait.
You know what? Let's do this. Let's look at the whole continuum and then open it for discussion.
Perfect.
And then we'll
Sorry.
also.
I'd done my homework, so I was already ready.
That was a great transition. Great transition. So let's look at this one.
Absolutely, and again, building out the 9 through 12 indicators really focused on while students are in the program 9 through 12, the graduate, right, in that grade 12 and completer stage, and then what we can measure beyond to give us and reflect back on the systems of support that we're providing to schools while they're with us. And again, reiterate the point that we've said several times, but I think it's important that those information are meant to help inform K-12 decision makers to iterate and improve upon existing programs, not as a way to evaluate or indict a school system knowing the myriad of different aspects that go into long-term student success after graduation.
The one thing I'll also point out, and then we'll open it up for questions and thoughts, and this will also be linked, if it's not already, I think it is already linked. There's Tier 1 information, which is what Ron shared, and then there's also going to be some additional summary of indicators where you'll find that the headline indicator, you were probably going to say this, where you'll find that the headline indicator is very clearly aligned to our characteristics to ensure all Indiana students graduate prepared to succeed, the definition of each indicator, the impact. You know, you can put data out there, but we have to make sure we're doing everything we can to make progress towards the data. And so some potential impacts, and then also the availability of some of the data points, many of which are available now, and some will be in development. But on that note, I'll pause and maybe Byron, do you want to start since we?
Are you ready? I'm going to ask a question about the high school on track. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first, though, I want to recognize that John O'Neill's right about this stress. I'm stressed because I got one more acronym now with the GPS, right? And sometimes I have trouble remembering what that is. But also, if you'd have told me that coming to this meeting today, we were going to hear people talk in favor of A to F, I'd have told you were nuttier than a fruitcake. So I kind of appreciate that we're not talking about that, but I don't know that I've ever been in a meeting where people have been for A to F. So that's just refreshing. So high school on track. And this was actually something that John made me think about in his comments. If we want this to be a quick look, like you said, 10 minutes, I want to be able, 10 seconds. Okay, that makes this even more important. How do we, because it was talked about mobility and those kinds of things, and I don't want us to forget, we've talked about this for a few years now, this piece of what I've always called shared accountability. How, if a student is behind when they come to me, I just don't want us to lose the fact that a parent should be able to see, I think that's only fair to the school where the student is, that they're able to know they didn't come to them that way, that somebody else gets credit for that as well. Is that, have you all, I forgot to ask that this week, has that been factored in?
Yeah, so I think, Dr. Ernest, I think part of the timeline is to think about business rules. So I don't want to get too far out ahead of the stakeholder feedback, but I do want to give you some information as an option. So traditionally, high school on track is measured at the individual student and to say, does this student have enough credits to be on track? But an alternative way to measure it, as long as we can support that with research and we think it's a valid measure, is to just look at how many credits a student accumulated in a given year. And so that would control for the time a student is in your school. And if you are a school that accelerates learning, if we reported out a median as an informational rate, a median number of credits earned by each student in your building, you'll see students in an accelerated environment, their median credits earned will be probably higher than another school. That can indicate to a consumer that if you have a student or a community that has students that are falling behind at some point and need help catching up, that might be a good place for them. But I want to then back up to say what I just said is even premature because we want to make sure we're engaging stakeholders around conversations just like that. Mobility has come up a lot in our conversations, and so we want to make sure that how we design the business rules prioritize students and make sure that we're measuring actual student outcomes, but also accommodate for and try to capture the school system's impact.
And the growth that a school, I think what I heard you also say, the growth that a school and educators have really provided in the life of a child.
Yeah, because if they come behind to you and you make up that, you should get credit for that too, right? I've always said I think that's super important piece of that. Can I ask my second question then, or you want me to wait?
I would, since you asked, let's have you wait. No, I'm kidding. Go.
My second question, so the opportunity gap discussion this morning from people has really resonated with me. How Ron will, and I get that we can show the data disaggregated out via the subgroups, right? How do we need, or have you thought about really how does that roll into some kind of an opportunity? I was sitting here thinking and just trying to be, I don't know that this is anything I'm wanting an answer necessarily, but I think we need to take heed to what we heard this morning. How do we roll that into something that we can look at as to what that looks like? I'm more of an opportunity gap guy than an achievement gap because I don't want it just based on a test score, right? But how do we roll up into, so that was my other question that kind of came up with, yes, more of a broad, because I think that's super important points that have been brought up this morning.
So as we look ahead and build out this dashboard for Indiana, that in many respects is the first of its kind in the country to show data at this level. For every single one of these indicators, at every single school, student populations are going to perform in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think when we talk about the achievement and opportunity gap, that's really what I hear and heard today and from others, is to make sure as we build out that data experience, that information is clear to a parent, to an educator, to a community leader. Scott, jump in.
Yeah, I think, again, I get that you want the 10-second rule, right? It's on there, and you don't want to clutter everything at the front. I think, as I was thinking through this, and I agree with Byron, the parents really did a great job of reflecting, like, from their perspective, like, what do you need to see in order to make a decision about your child's education? Like, that is the most important decision a parent will make. And so putting something there, and I was just thinking through, like, we have all these headline indicators. If there is, rather than saying, like, well, here's another indicator that's achievement, right, or opportunity gap, that on every single indicator, there's a red flag if there's too big of a gap, and that tells somebody, oh, that's a problem. And we know we have schools in the state who would have no red flags, and we have other schools in the state where every single indicator would have a red flag by it. And as a parent, if I'm going to look at that, and I'm seeing that all over the place, now I know. Because what we don't have to do is say, well, yeah, the data's there, you just got to click down, and you got to go, and you got to look. Man, that is, if you have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, time is precious, and there's no way you're going to spend all that. So I think that's really important from the user design, right? As you get into that in the business rules, incorporating that thought that says we want to make that front and center. It may not be a specific measure in and of its own because we have all these other indicators, but we certainly can flag those and say there's a problem, or at least something you should go look at in more detail.
And I think,
Comments?
yeah.
Pat?
That's what we talked about in our conversation is, can there be a color code as you look at the dashboard? I mean, we've learned that as we've gone through COVID, as whether or not we're green, we're orange, we're yellow, or we're red with the positivity rates that we have. And why can't this be the same way that we set metrics that says this district's doing a great job or this school's doing a great job? This one's getting there, this one's, getting to proficiency, but this one's got some red flags. I agree with that. I think when we look at K2 on here, and these will all be business rule things, getting us to power standards, getting us to proficiency checklists instead of grades, because we really want to know what skill level our kids have and whether or not they're proficient and literate, have literacy skills that can move them forward and math skills that can move them forward. I really appreciate we have growth there, because when you work in an urban school setting, it's about growing kids. We'll get them there if they stay with us, but they've got to stay with us and continue to grow academically. As always with the high school stuff, my concern goes back to the fact that on and off ramps for our kids, as they're going down pathways, I'll say it again, CTE needs to come back in under the department's umbrella, and that way we can have a conversation with school people of how courses are developed and pathways are developed, and that will be very important as we go down this dashboard, because we've got to make certain that kids have options. I mean, if you look at me when I was a freshman, and kids today, they're going to be pro athletes. And after their freshman year...
Did you think you were going to be a pro athlete?
You bet. Every kid does. Every kid does.
In what sport?
Huh? All of them. I mean, my goodness. If you're playing them, that's what you think.
Okay, good.
And then all of a sudden you realize...
I did not ever think I was going to be a professional athlete, just for the record.
And so then it's, what do your parents do? And you look at what your parents' professions are, and then you're like, I don't want to do that all my life. But if I've taken courses my freshman and sophomore years and now I'm locked in, now I'm going to give up. I'm not going to care. And so we got to have on and off ramps for our kids to make certain that they finally figure it out. And I've got a daughter who's a senior this year that this year has finally figured out what she wants to do. We've been down the path of a whole bunch of different professions for 3 years. And I'm not sure that what we are doing today allows that to happen. And so we really need to look at that and make certain that we have on and off ramps for our kiddos to make certain that they have the skills necessary to hit what that longitudinal goal is of an income that can support them and give them a prosperous life. That's the end goal of the whole thing. I mean, the continuum's great, the data will be great, but the bottom line is I think we're trying to make certain the kids have the skills necessary to be good citizens.
Thank you. Okay.
One, ditto everything that Pat said. We had the same conversation about color coding. Like, we have to make this easy for parents. We want to give the illusion that we're being transparent without being transparent. We use a bunch of acronyms and we overwhelm them with data that we're not going to dig through.
Yes.
So keep this simple. I love the red, yellow, green. It's what we use for Apex courses, so red, yellow, green makes sense to everyone. I'm there, I'm getting there, or I'm not there. So the fact that we're committed to not overwhelming folks, because again, not that all these other sub data points aren't important. It's just, if you want to dig further, you can, but you don't have to. And that is important to parents. I should be able to pull on that. I loved it. When you said 10 seconds, you had me sold on a phone call. Like, I loved that part. When you said 10 seconds, I can come in and I can see, is this school getting it done? I love that part. Going back to, and I said this the last meeting, but I think it's important to say it again. I think that we all appreciate the undertaking that you've done here. You're 20 of being an educator, and we've been begging for multiple data points for the entire duration of my career, and probably prior to that. So, but it's hard work. So taking this on is a monster. The kudos to you for doing it. It does paint the picture. Not the test scores aren't important, because I believe that they are. I believe knowing if our kiddos have those skills built and the proficiency is important, but there are also other things that are important as well. So painting that broad picture of what's happening in schools will truly give parents the ability to make this decision, look at this and say, okay, this is the place I want my kiddo in school, because it is the most important decision they'll make. So kudos to you for taking this on. I do love the asterisks when we have, I'm glad that we understand there's a lot of work still to do.
Yes.
But the work that you've done to this point, you should be commended for, and I'll be honest, when you told me we were gonna have this done in December a couple months ago, I was just like, no. So job well done is the summary of that, and I know that you don't always get to hear that. Usually you'll get to hear when things aren't done and we complain. But no, having this done is impressive, and it's good work, and kiddos are gonna be better off for it, so. Good.
Thank you for sharing, BJ. I'm going to offer those on the phone, if you have any thoughts or comments, don't feel any pressure, just offering.
I move to approve.
Dr. Jenner, Katie Moe.
Second. Oh,
So
sorry.
I was just going to affirm the framing that BJ provided and just express my support for moving forward. And hopefully, Pat, that is a nice segue to the motion I think you were about to make.
And if I could briefly,
Okay. Oh, well, I wanted to ask William, I always call him out on accident, but I wanted to know if he had he's the only board member at this table who has not spoken yet, so if you have any comments, William.
I just ditto everything that's been said. I am a huge advocate for ease of use, and so I think that is huge for parents. And I also agree that there should be some type of on and off ramps for students as well. And so I think we're definitely headed in the right direction.
and if I could briefly, 2 points. One is kind of levity point. I'm sitting on 4 years of eligibility. I'll take that opportunity to share that at this public. So if any D1 coaches out there, I'm with you, Pat, still dreaming. Number 2, though, Jason and I truly stand on the shoulders of giants. I said that in a meeting once and everybody laughed, but it's absolutely the truth. Jason highlighted them at the beginning, and I would be remiss if I didn't close with that as well. Folks that are working all hours beyond the normal workday to get us where we are today. BJ, what you shared is, we appreciate a ton, and while Jason and I are the face of it, we are not the brunt of it. And so I want to just express the gratefulness for them and also Dr. Jenner's leadership to organize the crew to get us here.
Taken a team of internal folks from DOE, State Board of Ed, and also so many external partners. And it's going to take a team as we go forward. On that note, this is the timeline we've already shown and shows the action steps we have forward. I believe I heard a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? In that case, with a motion and second, roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Bass.
Aye.
Ms. DeLosa.
Yes.
Mr. Durham.
Yes.
Dr. Ernest.
Aye.
Dr. Freitas. Mr. Gastineau. Mr. Mapes.
Yes.
Ms. Moat.
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler.
Yes.
Thank you.
I hear students.
Students in the
Thank you
background,
very
I
much.
love that.
I think
Mr.
they said
Watts.
yes, too. Sorry,
Yes.
go.
Thank you. And Dr. Jenner.
Yes. On that note, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, take some time for yourself, and we will be ready to get after it in the new year. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for those on the call.
Funny, your kiddos were listening, that's awesome.
They were.